Back to the conference. We are into panel 2, and I'm the moderator of this panel. Okay, we're going to have 4 papers. This panel is Southeast Asian Museum and Heritage, and there will be 4 papers. The first one is Recentering the Temple Museum and Socially Engaged Curating by Heidi Tan, Udomlak Huntragun, Omar Mio. Please, I give you the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to Dhammasat University and all your partners for inviting us to share some of our new findings from field work undertaken in the last 2 years. So I just really want to briefly introduce my co-researcher team because I think it's important that we understand who the people are doing this research and where we're coming from and what we bring to this research. So my colleague here, Dr. Omar Mio, is senior researcher at SPAFA in Bangkok. She's a very experienced and dedicated cultural heritage practitioner. She was cultural project officer at UNESCO Myanmar office, where she She contributed to the nomination of the Pew Ancient Cities and Bagan, which were inscribed in 2014 and 2019. I think I better use the other mic. She's also Secretary General of the International the ICOMOS in Myanmar, and she'll co-present with me today. And her questions around the sacred and how a devotee engages in the temple museum really get to the heart of this question about socially engaged from the perspective of a Buddhist practitioner. And of course, Udomlak Huntakun, as you know, is the director here at the University Museum. And of course, she trained in field archaeology, museology and social development and Southeast Asian art history. She received her PhD from SOAS in 2022. She has extensive archaeological fieldwork experience in Thailand, focusing on relations between highland and lowland cultures in the late 1st and early 2nd millennia, as evidenced in material culture. And her publications are oriented to the critical dimension of her work in cultural heritage and museology. She, like me, is a founding member and co-editor of the postgraduate journal Pratu. As for myself, I'm a lecturer in curating and museology at SOAS, University of London. I was previously a senior curator at the Asian Civilizations Museum in Singapore, where I was responsible for developing Southeast Asian collections for almost 2 decades after I helped to establish the museum in 1997. I curated a series of special exhibitions on art and material culture of the region, including Thailand and Myanmar. I have traveled and conducted fieldwork in Myanmar since 2008, and in 2020 I received my PhD for my thesis from SOAS, Meritorious Curating and the Renewal of Pagoda Museums in Myanmar. Please Google me and you can download a free copy online. In particular, I would like to thank our partners, our temple custodians and scholars who have been instrumental in contributing to the research and development of an online archive. I am cognizant that in this gathering here of academic community, our local partners, who I consider to be co-researchers, are not present. Nonetheless, we will try our best to nuance their insights and interpretations. And last but not least, we could not do this work without the funding and support from our respective organizations, SOAS and Dhammasat University. The Research Culture Seed Fund at SOAS supports research projects that enable collaboration between academic and non-academic partners, and also increases opportunities for early career researchers. So a little bit about the background to this work. I think I might just move the slide on. Buddhist temples, storerooms, museums and shrines in particular have long been footnoted as repositories for objects of art, historical and archaeological value, although more recently palaces and religious museums have been recognized as first-generation museums in broader studies of regional museum development. I'm thinking of Bernard Salato's work in 2015 and Numrazan in 2016. Although study of temples as museological contexts has received little attention, some historical precedents exists in the work of the Thai ruler King Chulalongkorn, who established a collection at Wat Benchamapopit in Bangkok in 1899. The ruler's own curatorial practice and understanding of the temple's museological potential continues to be seen today in his selection of Buddha images, which are still arranged clockwise around the temple's cloister or the covered circumambulatory path. I think in Thai you call it the Prarabyangkot. Sorry about my pronunciation. According to Prince Damrong's article of 1928, a total of 50 ancient and replica images from Thailand and other regions of the Buddhist world were collected for display in this space, which Prince Damrong called a gallery. They were works of merit, but the king's intention was also to instruct the public about Buddhist iconography. And you can read Damrong's article of 1928 about this. The conflation of ritual and educational objectives, not to mention the ruler's own regional and global engagement in the diplomatic gifting of Hindu and Buddhist art, for example, to the Dutch, demonstrates how temple museums' potential for serving multiple objectives has been and continues to be leveraged by powerful patron donors. At the same time, his engagement with 19th century colonial ideas about the study of art and the museum must also have been a motivating factor. Whether or not the king used the term gallery or even museum for this space, I'm not sure. However, the entangled relationship between the temple museums, state-funded museums, and legacies of Western epistemologies such as art history and iconography is something that others have discussed at length more recently, namely Christina Krebs in the Indonesian context, and more recently Siriporn Srisinurai's work in Isan. And this is something we continue to observe, especially at the larger pagoda museums in Myanmar and Thailand today. In this co-authored paper, we draw on my doctoral research conducted 2015 to 2017, which critically assessed the museological practices of the pagoda museum, as they are known in Myanmar. We investigate the phenomena of the temple museum more widely distributed across the border in northern Thailand, the region known as Lanna, where Shan communities over many centuries and others have been settling or have resettled and are still settling from across the border with Shan state. Our fieldwork is still at a very preliminary stage, but we felt it was important to share our observations and thinking in order to review, gather your feedback, and plan our next steps. And so we raise a few questions today that we are currently thinking about, and particularly in relation to spaces of display and practices of care. And we discuss these in relation to the idea of what is socially engaged curating. Okay, so there's a few aims here to discuss what, where, and when is a temple museum in the context of northern Thailand. I think we will not discuss Lanna too much, the context too much. We will look more at the museological potential of the temple museum. And one of the challenges is of course, to get away from this sort of binary way of thinking. Is it sacred or is it secular? Is it a temple or is it a museum? Is it for spiritual purposes or is it for educational purposes? We are in the murky waters where we are trying to find a nuanced way of thinking about hybridity, I guess, thinking about how these things come together. Overlaps in the use and meaning of the spaces of storage or display and practices of care. What is socially engaged curating? We'll talk about that in a minute. And I suppose eventually what we are hoping is we can contribute to the growing field of critical museology in Southeast Asia by recentering temple museums within the broader discourse around museum ethnologies and so on and so forth. Okay, moving on swiftly. These are a few of the museums we will mention today. As you can see, these examples illustrate a range of temples of differing sizes and constituents. They include Wat Pa Pao, just outside the northeast corner of Old City Wall of Chiang Mai, which was developed during the late 19th century, just before the transfer of Lanna to Siam. And it remains an important site today, very important for the Shan community. Wat Pratat Haripunchai and Wat Pratat Si Chom Thong are both much larger and have royal accreditations and ancient histories dating back to the 9th and the mid-15th centuries, respectively. They have large collections that have enabled them to expand the spaces of display, which now include extensive shrine displays, as well as dedicated museum spaces set up in 2017 and 1996, respectively. And last but not least, the small village at Ban Rongming, where the abbot's collection was started in 1984 and continues to grow with cross-border movement. 5 minutes only. We have 20 minutes, right? Have I taken?
Only 5 minutes. You're past 15 minutes.
I've passed 15 minutes. I'm going to fast forward very, very fast. Sorry. I wanted to put up this slide because, this is what kind of like sums up our conundrum, our challenge, our way of trying to get away from binary thinking. There's like 4 quadrants, there's this line from temple to museum, there's this line here for patrons, devotees to royal monastics, and somewhere in all of this, oh dear, no, it hasn't worked. There's supposed to be a fly-in where I'm supposed to show you a blue circle that it's the temples in these 2 quadrants on the left-hand side that we are interested in. They're spaces that don't necessarily call themselves museums. They call themselves something else. Vihan Museum, maybe Gandakuti, or 1,000 Buddha Hall, for example. Oh, there it is. That's the section that we're interested in. Okay, what is socially engaged curating? You know what? I'm just going to look at my notes on there and just zoom in on something. So since the 1980s and the new museology movement, democratization of movements, we have seen an increasing interest in museums engaging their communities, all right? And why do we want to recenter the Temple Museum? Because others have already been talking about related topics, such as Ajahn Parita and Siripon just recently with her thesis. And so we want to see if we can bring our work in relation to their work. And so one way of doing this is looking at spaces, and this is a temple museum in Shan State that I studied, where we actually see, is there a pointer on here? Yes. Where we can actually see the museum is embedded in the walls of the inner shrine here. And it's called the Inner Museum. It doesn't have a signboard, they just call it the Inner Museum. And so we might ask the question, where is the museum? Can you see it in this picture? It's a series of window cabinets around the outside wall. Everybody faces into the shrine. They don't even look at the museum when they come to pray. Okay? It's just there. It's a very liminal space. And so we looked at shrine displays in Wat Papao, and we looked at a display called the Gandakuti, which is outside the main shrine. And we had conversations with monks who were very happy to take down Buddha images for us to look at. And now I'd like to hand over to give my colleague a chance to speak. 3 minutes.
Okay, Mingalava. So in 3 minutes, I will be presenting very fast. So that the first thing I like to mention is that I'm not a museum expert, but my experience related more to the safeguarding heritage through community engagement. So through community engagement, and I also realized the important roles of the museum. And today, because the museum is a key role to passing on the heritage to the next generations. So today, I like to discuss as like a Buddhist devotee that Buddha images in a temple museum do not entirely stop religious functions, but their role or function differ from those in active worship areas. So these are the different roles of Buddha images which are put in the shrine and then in the museum. So of course in the shrine areas, so the devotees can actively engage for all the religious contexts, and then the images are treated as living symbols of the Buddha, and the interaction is more personal and more spiritual. So of course in the museum, so you can see this, so I use the museum and the area as Wat Pratat Haripunchai as an example. So in a temple museum, the primary purpose is, of course, for preservation and education. So these images may be ancient, fragile, or historically significant, but they are displayed to protect them from the wear and tear of daily religious use. So, but for some Buddhist people, they might think that Buddha images are not only art objects, but also spiritual significance for Buddhists. So they may feel that their religious symbols when they put in the museums are being commodified or disrespected. So you can see that Buddha image in this glass case, that it was like a collection, and it is not treated as a Buddha itself. So this is the left-hand side, the image is about the 1,000 Buddha Hall in Wat Haripanchai again. So is this a collection of the Buddha images, ancient and new? And then they also have the social practices, ritual practices there. But when all the Buddha images are collected, whether it is a museum or it is just a prayer hall. So what's the difference between a prayer hall and then a museum, a temple museum? So it is also, we need to define it. So sometimes we say that, okay, the museums are doing some practices without disrespect to the Buddha images, but again, shrines and temple museums protect Buddha images by putting them behind in the bars, iron bars sometimes, for the protection, for the safety. So it is disrespected, or the Buddhist devotees must understand that it is for the safety. So also it is also very ambiguous and it is controversial to understand about it. And then the right photo is about the Katina festival celebrating in the community hall of Wat Rongmeng. And so these communities are always engaged in the temple's activities. So that kind of communities can be also invited to discuss about the museums, temple museums, and then their roles to be offered to give some comments on what Buddha images should be treated in the temple museum. That's why it is important for the socially engaged curator include with honoring the sacredness of Buddha images by all-inclusive participation. Thank you.
Have we got any time left at all? I'll just flick through these just to, when is a temple museum? There's quite a lot more to be said here, but I wanted to just end really with the voices of the people that we talked to. So the abbot of Rongmeng, who told us that, you know, it's his fortune to be a collector, because it was a premonition of a monk who told him old things, you know, will come to you. So he sees his role as collector as something, they came to me, these objects came to me. Wat Papao, he advised us, you know, really, I did my best. He's already 72 years old. And, you know, when I leave this world, you know, I'm not attached to these things. We have to let go. We have to let go and let somebody else take care. And Yadanama Ang, trustee in Shan State, was very keen on the heritage side of things. He really wants to see young people coming and learning about their heritage. But the final one is the Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon. The volunteer there says, it took 2 years before he said to me, you know, because I kept coming and asking him so many difficult questions all the time. And why she's asking me so many questions? And he said, you know, in the end, everything belongs to Buddha. It's all Buddha's belongings anyway. So I thought, that's a great quote. That's how I would like to end this talk. So thank you very much. Please ask us questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, it's a sort of phenomena that you see throughout Southeast Asia. I think you will receive lots and lots of questions after this. Okay, and move to the second paper. From Death Museum to Becoming a Living Museum, the case of the Anthropology Museum at the University by Modiati and Shakari Hussain. Please make your way to the stage. Okay, so we have 2 seats, 2 presenters at the time. Okay, the stage is yours.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to attend our presentations today, but actually maybe it's simple presentation for us because I think I think it's different idea because we could not talk about that Buddhism, but today we would like to talk about that of museum. So the initial article research actually started from the anxiety about how to ensure that museum collection and do not die in the room alone. Collection cannot speak for their time. So therefore, the first object used in the research is the museum in the University Airlangga, actually my home base. There are 3 museums actually at museum, medical museum, and museum social and culture, and museum ethnography museum. Sebelumnya, previous. Okay, that's it. The background issues, main issues about the observing and explaining the development of museum in the university environment. I think in Universitas Airlangga, because I think it is important. Many issues in my university museum. So, okay. Overall, University Airlangga has 3 active museums owned by 3 faculty, namely the Medical Education Museum by Medical Faculty, the History and Culture Museum for Faculty of Humanities, and Ethnography or Dead Museum from the Faculty of Social Politics. Next. This is a Medical Education Museum from Universitas Airlangga. And secondly, and the History and Culture Museum, maybe we visited in this museum. And the third museum, Ethnography or Dead Museum. So the main problem of university museum, actually my university firstly it is not known that university have educational museum, and secondly there is very minimal collection and the staff to manage it. And thirdly, it has not yet become an important part of the curriculum at university. So the second problem is the lack information, promotion and collaboration with museum in the university environment, and giving the impression that museum only belong to one group, actually faculty. So the main problem, I think we have to underline problem, how can a museum belong to everyone? And is there a technique or method? So that's the how to do. I think it's very interesting if we can create a new concept museum, moving museum, and I think have to. So that's when moving museum like what? Museum collection are present in society and not the society that comes to the museum, but museum become live. And this is why the museum. This is the one of our collection in the Dead Museum, and I think it's very thematic. And yeah, this is the film. I'm not sure, but that's the film. Oh, okay. Next. Okay. This Dead Museum is interesting. The thumb collection in the first museum within University Airlangga since 2005, and there is no specific time, but since 2017, it has changed from ethnography museum to Dead Museum. But would if very difficult to carry the theme of death in the concept. And this is Dead Museum. Maybe we can see about the collection about the the meaning of the kuntilanak like that in Indonesian, and so many constraints that is still seen as sacred and taboo to talk about, that is presented as something that is just a game and fearful of talking about the dead. So maybe my colleague Pak Sarkawi would like to conclusion about our presentation.
Thank you, Bu Murdiati. Actually, we are thinking how to bring a campus museum live. The first one is to make the museum a house of education and learning. The current condition that views the museum as a warehouse and ancient object. But now, museum, especially in Indonesia, most of museum in Indonesia like storage of ancient stuff. So the second one is to build a museum into edu-tourism and edutainment so that it can make a profit. The third, changes in the way museums are managed that can have significant impact on education and the economy. And then improve the quality of the museum management resources and prepare adequate funding. I think this is important to maintain the museum collection, do branding so that the museum is of interest to the public. So that is our homework in Indonesia, especially in Airlangga University. But actually some ethnographic audit museum in University Airlangga, activists for the public. First one, to bring the UNER, that museum, closer to the public. The museum often conducts events that improve the public. For example, workshops, a bone class, where participants can learn directly using real bones. And the second one is a Wayang Potehi show. Wayang Potehi is all Chinese legacy in the art of puppetry. For thousands of years, Chinese communities, as we know, have not only settled on many parts of Indonesian islands, but also share their culture and tradition with the local population. One of the most fascinating legacies of Chinese culture in Surabaya is a puppetry known as a Wayang Potehi. The third, inviting batik expert to give a public lecture on the philosophy of batik for death. As you know, batik and death in Indonesia, especially in Japan, is so very close. Yeah. And collaboration with the local radio to introduce a museum to the public. And the last one is publishing the museum's collection into a scientific article titled Prehistoric Wallace, a melting pot of human genetic ancestries. Yeah, thank you so much for your attentions.
Thank you very much, Modiati and Hussein. And Death Museum, very interesting and very daring, and it's very philosophical. Okay, how long is the film? Can we wait until the fourth, after the fourth paper and see? Okay, right. May I invite the third speaker for the paper, Our Aligned Missions to Preserve Heritage. Apirada Gomut, please come to the stage.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a good lunch, but hopefully not yet a good nap in the afternoon. I like to stand up because I think so far it's just too comfortable for me, especially after the lunch. And today I'm representing the project that I'm working on and trying to conceptualize what we have done in the project with the concept of decentralized museum. The project that I'm working on is the Maritime Asian Heritage Survey, which is branched in Thailand. We have 3 separate countries working in the same protocol. And here we are in Thailand with a good support from Silpakorn University Faculty of Architecture by Professor Grengai, who is here with us as well. And we receive a very good support from Kyoto University, the team, and funding from the UK. And thank you very much for that. So this kind of agenda I would like to talk about today. So it's 7 points. I will go through quickly. The MHS project, as I said, we have 3 different branches in different countries, 3 countries actually. One in the Maldives, second in Indonesia and Thailand. And our project is focusing on documentation. It's the documenting survey. So we are not really pretty much on analyzing information or the data that we have. We only would like to preserve the information and in the visualization methodology. And then we'll curate the digital database so that it will be accessible for as many as people in the public. We hope it to be global. And then at the same time that the heritage will be, the information will be preserved as it is today. We haven't done any restoration or recreation of anything, just documented as it is. And we're trying to focus on the local object, the object that has been found or kept in the local, and or having some connections with the local people. That is our focus. So this is who we are, our team. This one, Professor Michael Finer from Kyoto University is the project director. Our Honorable Professor Gengai Kursiri from Silpakorn University, and our Thai team. And here we have a good chance to gather together and got this picture of the 3 teams from 3 countries and the lab support from Kyoto all together in Maldives. And also we have another team member who work remotely helping us verify information that we collected. Equipment, yes, as the world goes digital, we would like to use as robust technology as we could find. And believe it or not, the technology that was like this one that's kind of advanced at one time, like 2 years ago, and now it's the new ones already come in. And just, but well, this one's still working well, and we hope that we could produce something more meaningful and useful for people anyway. So we're trying to digitize the heritage in the local and make it more presentable and visible in the wider sphere. The data that we have the team of the 7 people travel around Thailand to find the heritage that hidden in the community, temple, houses, and we do have our, the scope seems broad, but we do have the scope that has to be maritime related, because we have listened to them in the morning presentations, and we find that land and sea are pretty much not connected in in the academic studies. Not much. Well, it's starting to form the connections now, and this is what we're trying to emphasize, that there is actually many more heritage that hidden and could give us more information about our linkage and our connections, not only just land or sea, but it's a sea and land and river as well. And yeah, we're trying to involve the ideas of our partner. When we work with the local, we always work with respect. We're not going out as we know it all, but we try to get the information from the local people, and we seriously listening to them and have their voice in how we select the object together with us. Okay, come down to what we are doing. And here is the aerial survey. We use drone, 3 types of drone that we are using. The first one is LiDAR that we're trying to fly through, and I have to explain a bit more about how we generate this information. The field team only responsible for data collecting, and we could generate something simple to check whether the information that we collect can be processed. And then we have a Kyoto lab team that helped us generate the proper information that we have gathered from the team. So we are having 2 teams supporting each other. And this is a result that produced by the field team from the drone LiDAR. And then the information goes to Kyoto. We have a different software to work with. This one generated by Archisoft Magichef, so that we could get the information of the landscape. We also do use DSLR photography. When we're doing taking photographs, we do have the protocol. Everything that we have done is in the same protocol, that we have to standardize the data collecting process, and also how we produce the information and curate that database and information to the public as well. So we're trying to do everything the same way in our collection. We did 3D modeling and in the field team of the objects that we could. If it's not too complicated protocol, that we can just do it in the team. When we do the photographs and documentation, cleaning is the first thing that we have to do. And also it's a very useful way to look at the object carefully, whether it has some damage or it has some interesting information. Like this one is the head of the statue found in Vieng Sa that sit in the temple museum since the, who knows. And we have found that the eyes of the statue have the pearl attached to it. So this is something I personally didn't know before, that the ancient Buddha image has something like this. So, and we use iPad LiDAR, we use scanning for documentation, the point clouds, and then we generate that into 3D visualization in the end. As I said, we also listening to people. We collect oral history along with the material objects and tangible heritage. When we gather data all together, and that we have to have all the information, we create the app sheet, like a form for every site, every feature, objects, collections, oral history, and 3D models, maps that we generate. We all have the information as for the database to prepare this for the lab team to understand, and also the public to understand in the end, that we have like at least basic information of these to tell. And when I'm talking about survey, data collecting, we are not doing just 1 temple, 10 temple, 20 temple? No. We do hundreds. And every phase, every term, thank you, every terms of our work, we generate at least 30,000 photographs, excluding drone, excluding point clouds, blah, blah. And thus we have to have a good management plan for the data management. We use like Google Cloud Transfer, and that system provided for us. This is the number. Well, speaking of number, that we have it growing every term that we've been working on. It means that more and more hidden heritage has been collected and will be visualized soon. Yeah, we use all these online platforms to curate and present our database in the end. And we will have our, the database will be attached to the university cloud base, like Kyoto University, Oxford University, Silvergone University, and we try to give it back to the local as well when the information we gather from them, whether it's photographs or the 3D visualized, in the end we will be given to our partner. Yeah, we still keep doing that for another year. And next, well, now we are here. We're in the western region. And now next we are going to the south after the break in October, and then on and on until next year. Yeah, so this is something we would like to do. Well, we keep doing what we have been doing with some improvement that we have tackled with the problem, the challenge, the issue, whatever we have along the way. We're trying to learn from it, and we're trying to improve our work along the way. Yeah, we still will give the priority to the variety of the object and the type of heritage that we would like to collect. You know, local people know a lot about their area and their places, and we are just observer and trying to help them. And they giving us information that make us understand better about the heritage and the history in a comprehensive way. So we maintain that. So just almost the last slide. Yeah, I just want to wrap up that our project is aligned with the concept of decentralization because we would like to involve as many as people into the project. They do have voice. We really listened when we select the information, or whether, you know, even the information that they don't want us to collect or publish, so we understand that and respect that. We only go with what the local and the owner are happy with, and we were working together with less conflict. Yeah, so we hope that our project will be bringing the local heritage to more global. Yeah, looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you. And documentation is very crucial, actually. And you'll be surprised that you discovered a lot from the documentation, actually. Thank you. Very exciting project. And the leader is sitting here, Ajahn Green Kai. Very energetic, and congratulate the discovering so far. And the fourth one, I'm going to bring you to the Philippines. The heritage documentations in the Philippines, notes on the cultural mapping with local government by Flopper Manuel.
Okay, good afternoon. So, first, thank you to Ajahn Pujanok and Ajahn Udomlak for this opportunity to present what we have been doing in the Philippines as well for heritage. It's as I noticed from other presentations, it may be a little different. And what I'm presenting you today are some. That's why I called it notes. Some of my observations working with local governments in their cultural mapping projects or heritage documentation projects. So I've been doing it since 2018, and so far I've completed assisting 13 local government units, including one province. So what I'm presenting today is on some of my observations and reflections, and basically how was it already answered with the new law that was created in the Philippines. Okay. So I'll start with the background, which I started. So I think just to set my positionality on what I'm talking about. So yeah, I've been assisting since 2018 local government units. Most of them are in the northern Philippines, and so far I've assisted about 13 local government units in their cultural mapping projects. Okay. How do we do it? So the National Commission for Culture and Heritage, although I don't work there, but from time to time they ask us to assist or to represent them to assist local government units if they have requests for cultural mapping. If local governments request to the Commission cultural mapping projects or activities. So they get us as sort of consultant or facilitator for to assist the LGUs. And we work in the framework that was developed in the Philippines, which is intended to make it participatory, okay? So in the sense that it should be the community working on their own. So trying to identify what are their cultural properties, what are their heritage properties, and validate those on their own as well. So our role is just to guide them to identify what are these heritage properties and how to come up with documentations of these properties. Okay, so the National Commission for Culture and the Arts created a toolkit, okay, and this is how they define cultural mapping. So it's a systematic approach in identifying, recording, and classifying the cultural properties or resources of the community in order to describe, visualize, and understand them. And it's recognized as an ongoing process, and it can be done yearly, or they can do updating yearly or every 3 years, depending on their budget. Okay, so LGUs undergo different stages, and our role is to guide them on all the stages of the mapping project. So we start with scoping and negotiation. We meet with the mayors and other staff from the local government unit to introduce what is the cultural mapping project, what are the expected expenses, what is the role of the commission, what is their budget, how much should they prepare, what resources should they prepare. And if they agree to that, we will do social preparation. So we in the Philippines we have like barangay. It's called like villages or hamlets, and there's usually the head. So we invite all of those, including other stakeholders like historians, if there are. But most of the areas that I've assisted are rural communities, the very countryside. So there's really no historians. So usually we invite teachers from elementary and high school. And we present to them what are their we discuss with them what are their possible roles in the mapping project. And then the third one is the training of the mapping team. So after the LGU has identified the different resources that they need, they have gathered a team, then we conduct the training. So for a week, we do field work together. We train them how to do interviews and how to interview knowledge holders and how to do the mapping, the cultural mapping. And then we leave them for a few months to do on their own the data gathering. But in between, we do some follow-up meetings in between. And then the last, actually the last stage would be on the number 5, it's data validation. So usually we do data validation, so we invite all key stakeholders or knowledge holders, and we gather, the trained mappers will present what they have researched, or what they have documented. So it's like a thesis defense. It's like a defense for the mappers. So they present what they have studied, what is the significance of this cultural property. And for example, they invited about 30 stakeholders, so everyone should agree, will vote if it should be accepted or recognized as a cultural property of the community. So that's what we call as the community validation. And usually the number 6 and number 7 are discussions with local governments, again, for possible utilization and moving forward. What are you going to do with your data that you have gathered? So usually that's for number 6 and number 7. So we try to, or they try to map all domains of heritage, from natural heritage to intangible heritage to movable, removable, so anything that they can, that they would like to document. And as what I've been talking about, so the goal is for to include various stakeholders in various offices. And usually we present this during scoping, like what is the role of the different departments within the municipal office. So at least everyone is hopefully will participate. So why do local government units do this? Sorry. Because RA 166, or the National Cultural Heritage Act of 2009, actually requires all local government units to conduct an inventory of significant cultural properties within their respective jurisdictions and submit to the National Commission for Culture and the Arts these documentations, or it's not just inventory, but actually more thorough documentation. And what happened is it has become incentivized. So Philippines has the program of Seal of Good Local Governance. So if the local governments get this SGLG seal, that means they get to have higher budget from the national government. And that has become a requirement. So, and that falls under the 7th governance area, so tourism, culture, and the arts. So they are now required to do certain activities in culture and the arts, and the fastest thing that comes to their mind is also mapping. Okay, so what are the observations? Because of the Seal of Good Local Governance, heritage documentation by the local governments have become more of a compliance rather than it's really a project that we really want to do. So even though they don't have any idea yet on the utilization or what are they going to do about it, they need to do it because they need to submit by December at least a certain number of documented heritage properties to the commission, or else they will be tagged as non-compliant. So, and this is the memorandum requiring them to do that. And every month, the National Commission, so far, what happens is every month, the National Commission presents a record of submission, even the most compliant LGUs. So this is as of June. So far, there are 137 non-compliant local government units. And, sorry, there is, this 2024, so far 127 are non-compliant. Okay, and because everything that they submit will be included in the Philippine Registry of Heritage, which we call it MAPA Mana. So MAPA is map and Pamana is heritage. So the project is to create a database and cultural statistics for the Philippines. So So far, these are, as of June, these are what has been noted as submitted to the commission. However, the problem there is LGUs just keep on submitting, even though they have not yet undergone cultural mapping and there was no validation of data, but they just fill out the forms and then submit just because it's a requirement. So, for example, this is where my university is. It's the province of Nueva Ecija. So it has 32 municipalities and cities. Based on the report from the commission, 25 over 32 have submitted or complied. But in fact, only 2 municipalities have done and not even completed. Only one has completed. The other one is still doing the data gathering, have completed cultural mapping. So the submissions lack validation. And that's what we have been noting also to the commission, that there should be a stricter validation of submitted data to instead of just for compliance. Well, second, conduct and completion is political. Heritage is political in a sense. So not all LGUs can conduct cultural mapping project, and the common reason is the lack of budget. So LGUs who were able to initiate their mapping projects always had the strong support from their chief executive, like the mayor or the local council. And there are also cases, like in the 13 I have had, about 5 of them were not completed because suddenly they stopped after the training. Because during the training, we can already complete about 40. They can divide that into submitting 10 each per year. So for compliance, they can already do that. So there were cases that mapping project was started, but it was not finished due to lack of support. Or election comes, change of mayor, change of projects and priorities. So it's not completed. And usually mapping projects are finished in 1 year, or sometimes it even takes 2 years. What can be mapped is also a problem. Depending on the intention of the local chief executive, sometimes it's a decision. Well, let's just map whatever we can promote as tourist sites. Okay, so those are usually the intentions. Or one mayor, before starting the training, even told us, like, we want to develop a festival for the city. Because we don't have one. So that's the goal. That's the goal why we are doing the mapping. So that's according to the mayor. So they have what can be mapped is also sometimes their decision. Issues of private ownership. So sometimes this is a concern, and data privacy, because the Philippines has the Data Privacy Act, particularly for research. So sometimes they invoke that. For example, documenting heritage houses. It's a little difficult to do that because people have the assumption that once you document the heritage houses, they assume that the government will own the house. So there needs to be there's still a lot of education needed for the community to understand why we do this documentation. And the value of heritage, we always get this question when we go to the field. So, Tagalog, nakakain ba yan? So, can you eat that? Or can heritage feed you? Okay. Why should that be a priority project instead of putting the funds to farmers and to other more important needs? Okay. So, we always get that from even in LGUs. And ways forward is always tourism, because what happens is, the primary office that handles cultural mapping project is the local government unit's Tourism and Cultural Affairs Office. So the utilization is usually geared towards tourism, heritage tours, local museums, development of town festivals, okay? And there needs more participation from the community, particularly involvement of indigenous peoples, because we have 120 indigenous peoples. But LGUs want to avoid them because we have a very strict, free prior informed consent. We cannot do research with indigenous communities unless we get permission from the government. So some LGUs also would like to avoid that hassle. So sometimes the indigenous peoples communities are not included in the mapping. Okay, so this is what the new law is trying to address. So last year, Philippines has a new law. It's called, in short, it was called Cultural Mapping Law which is an enhanced version of the National Heritage Act of the Philippines. And however, the problem is that this now strongly or more in detail requires local governments to continuously do cultural mapping almost every year. They need to do to update their inventory every year. So, and submit it to the Philippine Registry of Heritage. The previous law also has a very confusing definition of what cultural property and what heritage is, but now they created categories, and based on the submissions and assessments, who will get prioritized for funding will be based on these grade levels. I think my 1 minute is done, so thank you.
Wow, thank you. Touring the Philippines in 15 minutes is quite exciting, and it's very energetic presentation. Thank you, Fopa. And we complained when the government doesn't have policy, and we also complain when they do have some kind of strange or improper policy. Anyway, so it sounded very familiar, somewhere nearer to the Philippines, just across the sea. Okay, right. It's bring us to the time for the discussion, and let me update you. For those of you who know Dr. Anna Kalmstrom, she is in good shape now. She went to see a doctor, and the doctor asked her to rest, and it's probably a wake-up call for her to take more rest, and she's probably overworked before she came, but she's hoping to turn up tomorrow morning, and we feel Apirada Gomut for her session after this. Okay, now it's the before we have a break, so we should have discussions about these 4 papers. And anyone would like to get the first questions, please, Hunter.
Hello. Is this turned on? Thank you. I have a question for Dada. I have 2 questions, actually. My first question is, for the objects which your research project is documenting, is there a temporal scope on where you stop looking at stuff and say it's too modern? And my second question is, do you have an idea when the data sets will be available online?
I'm not sure if I understand the first question. You mean like do I document the modern
What
description?
You kind of gave an idea of the sorts of objects you're looking at, but I didn't know are you looking at just ancient stuff or even modern stuff? Right. And at what point do you consider it like too new to be documented?
Yeah, then never a clear line with the dating. Since our project is designed to be heritage documentation, so we're trying to keep it as broad as we can. So it could be obviously look like ancients, like we know, like Tawarati or Ayutthaya period, and mostly that what we encountered. But sometimes we encounter something that's really local, and we didn't really know if it how old it was. That's we have to rely on the local people, asking them if this object is found in this area, and looking at the context of the area. Also, if how long have you been seeing this sitting there or something like this. If it has some kind of artistic values, or it look like old, which we're not sure if it's as old as to be in heritage or not, we consider it as heritage. So just to be safe that we kind of not missing anything. You know, if we document it today, and even today it's not considered a heritage, but maybe in the future, who knows? Yeah, but if something is really modern, like concrete, abandoned concrete structure on the road, we might not consider that, because it's, to us, it's obviously new. And if the people say, no, it's just been built for 10 years and then it's abandoned, so that we don't do it. Yeah. And the second question, very interesting. Now we're encountering a backlog, like huge database data that we have collected, and we have to clear that out. And we hopefully that by the end of next year, there will be everything that the project, the 3 countries that documented will be available. But at least we are not waiting until then to have everything published at the same time. We're starting to do it slowly. Now we have collections from Thailand available on Sketchfab, for example. But for the database, like the app sheet that I have shown, it will be up on the Arches. That would take some time because we have to verify the information. That's the process after we collecting information. We have to clarify all the English as well, because it will be a proper and readable English online, and it has to be less mistake and errors. So we have to check those information. Although we don't analyze information, the data, but we still would like it to be as accurate as we can. Yeah. Thank you.
Second questions, please.
I would like to ask Heidi or Unma about the temple, as there is not the clear line between the temple now and the museum. So do you interact with any monk or priest that you feel like the path, the way of life, his life, not only for the priest but also the curator now? And is there any positive way that if they feel like everything belongs to Buddha, they are as the descendant of the Buddha who protect the belief that result as the Buddhist images or anything like artifacts that are related to religious? So do they feel like, is there any positive way that they might be perform or practice as a curator themselves, and to guide everything that maybe they are afraid of the stranger who come to see or ask what inside the temple? So my question is, it's not a positive way or of the future that might be the monks will be another curator, practice a sign like curator in the temple, so the temple can be still religious temple as we know, or another religious museum. As a museum, we go like that.
You have 2 questions, right? One is, does the person who considers everything as Buddha's belongings see himself as the descendant of the Buddha, has curator? Yes. Yes. That particular example, I found that in Yangon at Shwedagon Pagoda. He is a lay, not a trustee, but he called himself a volunteer. He doesn't call himself a curator, actually. He says he's a volunteer. He has a role kind of like a trustee. He's not paid. He's a retired gentleman. You have to look at everybody in their own context. There's many different opinions that different monks and lay people have about what their role is. So it's kind of hard to generalize. So he aspired, I think, to be more like a National Museum curator, because Shwedagon Pagoda is the national ritual center, the most important sacred center in Myanmar. And their museum is very big. They're one of the biggest pagoda museums. So they consider themselves, almost parallel with like the National Museum, the state-funded National Museum, in terms of size and what they're doing. In fact, many people tell me they have more things in the Temple Museum than Pagoda Museum than the National Museum. Therefore, they prefer to go to the Pagoda Museum. So anyway, he's one person. The monk we met in Ban Rongming, for example, who felt that things came to him somehow by his fate, his karma. These things would come to him. I think felt very. He's both a monk, and he also has lots of things. He actually quite attached to his things, whereas another monk told us, "No, I'm very detached. Impermanence, anicca. I'm letting go of those things when I get old." Everybody's different. Everyone has very different ideas about what they are interested in, a level of interest as well, right? So you're asking me, do we see a trend, or do we see, can we generalize about these kinds of things? Maybe when we collect more examples, but for now we see these individuals being all quite different in the way they behave, although their attitude. I don't know, whether you want to add something to this question. We are collecting examples of people and their ideas about how to make knowledge in a temple museum. So there's lots of diversity.
I think it's come back to us when we talk about what is curator. So is it a curator in terms of the curate things, or the way that the local epistemology thing? The curator is different concept that they thought they are, but we might consider them a curator, but they may add kind of another meaning in that word. So this is the thing that we discuss in our research. We need to further observe on the way the local collectors or curators or monk think about their roles in terms of conserving heritage and religious objects.
I think the thing that unites all of them, however, is socially engaged practice. And I didn't really address that through merit making just now, because we rushed. I had notes to read and I couldn't get there, and I couldn't do it in a rush. So merit making means that you can affect your rebirth, your next life, by what you do now. And if you practice dana, practice generosity now, it will have an effect on your next life. So the temple museum is a space, it's an extension of the ritual space of the shrine. It's another space to go and make merit if you want to. But some custodians or volunteers or monks allow the temple museum to be used for ritual, and some don't. Some are very strict, and it can vary a lot. So all of them, I would say, believe that making merit is a good thing. That's what they're there for. That's what the temple does. And some of them feel that the museum is a place to do it too, and some feel that the museum is not a place to do it. That's how it varies, as well as the idea about what is curating.
Yeah. And also about the collecting practice, they might not consider this is a collecting, but because the things come to him by fortune, or by faith, this is their role to protect or to keep the merit making of people. So this is different way to think about the reason. So this is not their intention to collect things, but the things come to him, and this is because of people merit making. So this is a way that we try to think about the local museum like a temple museum that involve the merit making, the faith, and then people would believe. Is answer you?
Yes, I think this business of curating, or the word curator, is very, very interesting in the context of development of local museums or temple museums in Thailand and probably Southeast Asia. I think the term curator is quite new, and I remember that maybe 20 years ago when I started working, it's very difficult to translate curator into Thai. At the moment, I'm not quite sure whether there is a Thai word for it, right? So it's kind of a completely, well, I wouldn't say alien, but different concept. And I remember that this idea of a monk or a private person collecting artifacts has very diverse origins. Some of them, like the abbot at Wat Rong Meng, he may consider it his fate or a fortune that all these things come to him without acquiring, without asking for them. But in some small museums, in some local museums, they actually went out and acquired these artifacts because they felt that antique dealers are coming to our village, and they kept buying everything, every single thing we have in our house. So now we don't have an ox cart, we don't have any wooden implements left. So now, it's the time, and this is something like 30 years ago, they had to go out and ask for people to donate these things to the temple. So there are many different, diverse origins as how these collections were made in the first place. Yeah.
Okay. Any the speakers, you'd like to add something? Okay, we have more questions.
I'd like to join your discussion on the term curating. So not necessarily in the context of local museum, but I think the term curating has been changing as well in the context of contemporary art curating. So I think in English this word comes from the term cura from Latin, which means if we go back to the 15th century, the term curator refers to someone who preserve and take care of collections. But then it evolves. For example, in the 19th century, curator has a more kind of established status. They are associated with expertise in art history, for example. And then it keeps changing. Like in the 20th century, in the contemporary art context, curator and artist has a kind of, the line between the two was really blurred, and now the term curating is not limited to the museum context anymore. Like you can say, oh, this menu is curated by this person, like this fashion is curated by that person. So I think with the rise of social media as well, we almost practice curating every day. Like if you're on Instagram, you select pictures, you select text, and then you put them together, and it's like you curate also. So I think in this case, the word curating is changing, and the trend is probably more less limited to a group of people, not to just the local, not just extending to the local people, but also to social media users, for example. So that's from my point of view. And my question was quite generic, not specifically for specific presenters, but all of you, because you all talk about engagement and collaboration in one aspect or another. And I think collaboration has different levels. So I was wondering whether you can share, in terms of practice, what challenges or conflicts that you faced, working with different stakeholders, and how you resolve that, how you deal with that conflict. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. And who would like to to share their ideas? The ideas about, did you say engagement, collaboration, or engagement?
Heidi, I think we encounter one, but this is not really affect much to us. But we realize that there are local conflicts when you're collecting the data, you had an interview several local museums, and you can see like a tension, like you can be involved in that if you only have give a voice on one side, and another you just not ignore, but you didn't realize that there are some conflict, so you can be a part later. But during the field work, you might realize, I think this is the one that we have to deal with and be aware that we might be like one temple that we interviewed the abbot and collections, his collections, and then we felt that this is very interesting, that the way that he collect things. And then another days we went to another museums, and then we had an interview another. Then they said, oh, have you been there? So the first thing I realized, oh, what should I answer, yes or no? Okay, I went to that museum and had an interview, and then they asked me like, what do you think about that? So this conversation is quite weird to me. Like if I say negative, this means, like this should not be negative. But if I answer positive, very positive way, but if I will create another conflict between them, so I just like, okay, we have to make a judgment and then decision that time. Like, okay, what do they intend? What's the intention of the questions? So yeah, this is just a part of our experience during the field work. Yeah, not to create or a part of that conflict, or just be aware.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Would you like to? Okay, Flopper. Thank you.
I'm not sure if it's also quite an engagement, but yeah, so since I work with local governments, and we see a lot of conflicts, especially during the validation stage. So since we invite about 20, 30, even one area invited 100 people. And there's like, so the argument usually like, why did you map this, not this? Why did you map his property, not mine? Okay, and there are arguments, so it's like internal arguments usually, and we always leave it to the community. And from the beginning we tell them, so you might disagree with each other, but majority wins at this case since we're doing the validation. So that's usually, and we present the criteria based on the RA 166 or in the heritage law, what can be considered as heritage. But since it's a community validation and it's participatory, we always invoke that it's the community who decides. It's the entire community who decides what you want to include in your local cultural inventory or local cultural profile. So even though there are internal conflicts, we leave it to the community also to majority wins or to vote. So if hand raising is not enough, we devised like a score from 1 to 5. 5 is the highest, and there are certain criteria set by the commission also on when can you accept it. So it's sort of resolved, or sometimes we just tell them that, you know, we may not able to do it this time, but since this project can be done again depending on your budget. So we just tell them that we will take note of all those suggestions and have it included or prioritized in the next round of your cultural mapping once you have budget to do it again. So and that's usually where they would stop. So they would just give a lot of suggestions, and we note them and we submit it also to part of our report, even part of their local cultural profile. In the last pages, we include all the suggested for the next round. It's part of the recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more questions or ideas or anything to share? Yes, you'd like to ask questions. Okay.
Yes, to adjourn Death Museum.
Yes, Death Museum, yes.
So yeah, since I'm also before coming here, I was also curator of a university museum, and I think the challenge is bringing students to the museum. And I'm particularly interested in your museum. I was able to visit the Death Museum last month during the ECAS. So, so I was wondering, given the content of your museum, do you have, do you have any projects or activities to encourage students to go into your museum? Or have you done any collaborations or partnerships with different faculty, for example, to include museum visit as part of the syllabus or the activities? Because I noticed your museum have on death rituals section and death rituals or burial rituals or practices, but you also have a science section on forensics. So how did you plan the layout or the contents of your exhibit in relation to encouraging the students to visit or to use it as a learning material for certain subjects, if there are?
Okay, thank you. I see when you met, but we didn't meet in ICAS last month. Yeah, of course, in this case, maybe we just only to make including in this curriculum in this our subject matter in this our department. So not our department, maybe in actual anthropology department. So that's why it's very limited when many students or many children visit museum. And actually, that museum only not collaboration between forensic studies and that museum. I think it's different because, but actually maybe our lecturer makes some collaboration to many projects to show how to make or how to use forensic to show that's that case in the museum.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple minutes more if anyone would like to ask further questions. Otherwise, we're going to have a little break. Now it's nearly 3 o'clock. Please come back at 3:15, and we have refreshments outside. And please come back in 17 minutes. And we have last session to discuss. See you later.